What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? When you ask, what do you like about working here? And the interviewer talks about the location of the job, it's a great place to live, instead of the actual job. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything, and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me, and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. My favorite is there's a lot of people waiting in line to work here. Count yourself lucky. Huge red flag. When you are signing all the forms they give you, and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that just sign here and so on. I didn't know it at the time, but you'll be wearing many hats was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running, but management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the unions, so you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. The question was subtle red flags. I came in for a job interview at 7:30 p.m. The entire staff was still in the office. Should have known right then that 9 to 5 was not ever going to happen. One day I worked until 2:30 a.m. to finish up a big project, and my boss said to me I could come in an hour later the next morning. Gee, thanks bro. With my public transport / travel time, that gives me a solid 2 hours of sleep instead of just the 1. Always ask the interviewer about the last person who worked the position you are interviewing for, how long they worked, and why they left. Their answers can be very telling of the work environment. You'll get full-time hours, but won't be full-time aka we'll do everything in our power to avoid giving you benefits, even though we have you working more than 40 hours in a week. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position, and they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back, it reduces productivity. Big nope for me. If they tell you not to discuss pay, I never ever followed this rule. It's important to find a way to broach the subject with your coworkers. If they are of the mind frame that it's impolite to ask someone their pay, then tell them yours and pay very close attention. Do they smile a bit? Do they look disappointed? Try to gauge from that. Because we don't discuss pay has always been a way to hold down wages and nothing else. It's illegal, but unfortunately it occurs anyway. They dodge questions on pay, meaning they don't pay enough for what they expect of you. The word family in reference to the employees means they want you to work lots of unpaid overtime. Edit. Also forgot, but if they keep talking about the experience you'll gain, that's also code for we know we are going to be underpaying you. At my last place of work, the person interviewing me had a printed cartoon on their wall of someone who looked like a bomb had blown up in their face, with the caption, "I spoke with boss name about it. I guess we are still doing it." That wasn't subtle at all, but I ignored it. The boss was an absolute tyrant who wouldn't listen to her staff, consider changing her mind about anything, or let people do the work they were best suited to do. She wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. The job itself was decent, but she was the worst boss I've ever had. I was once part of a group onboarding for an IT job. They handed us all the one-page new hire contract and everyone, except me, signed immediately. When I read the paperwork, I discovered we were signing a mystery document. Clauses included I agree to abide by the personal search and seizure security policy attached. Without other pages, there was no way to determine what I was agreeing to. I kept requesting more and more pages until the HR drone said, "Okay, I guess me is just determined to hold everyone up. We will handle you separately if you're struggling so much." After I walked out and drove home, I called the hiring manager to apologize for not taking the job. He informed me that HR reported I had walked out after refusing to be drug tested. Last job I worked. Yay, everyone here is new, but it's totally because of COVID. The boss doesn't like people going out to get lunch because they're afraid you'll never come back, so bring your own lunch. You'll get weird looks if you leave on time. It was a Chinese-owned company with heavy Chinese work culture influence, so you were expected to stay overtime all week. Also, the people here are nice, but it's pretty stressful. Eater also was told by my trainer, you want to know the best advice I can give you? Find another job. This was like my second week in. Jobs where the expectations of the position aren't clear. The person hiring you should be able to give a clear idea of your responsibilities day to day in a practical way. It shows that the company understands what it wants out of the position. I've worked a couple positions that had a really hard time figuring out who was supposed to do what. That lead to a lot of confusion, and both of them had this in the interviews. If the company you're working for can't define what success in that position, looks like you won't be able to either. My current boss gave me a great tip on the last interview I had. He said ask them if you can pick an employee to chat with about how they like the position you're applying for. They'll give a better impression of the place than management. I got the job I was interviewing for. I turned it down because the above is the kind of management I want to keep in my life. Also, the place undercut my pay offer, I found out, which is certainly also a red flag. We work hard and we play hard. Translation: you will work 60+ hours a week. You will be expected to work late nights and early mornings. People will treat this job like their whole life. We'll also underpay you. It may look like a decent salary, but when you back it out to hourly, it's not even remotely competitive with industry standard. But we have kegs and a ping pong table. Also, if everyone that interviews you has been there less than 2 years, it's a sign that they can't retain good employees. If you can see the floor before the interview, you can sometimes get a vibe about the place. I once went to interview for a sales position. Aside from the interviewer being 30 minutes late, it did allow me to sit and observe the situation. I realized pretty quickly this was not going to be the place for me. Very quiet except a handful of people on the phones cold calling. Many reps trying to push for contacts on the other end. Just painful to listen to, and when they'd hang up there wasn't really any interaction with coworkers. Just quiet, and then another call. It all seemed very tense. I noped out of there real quick after the 5 minutes the interview took. Dodged a bullet. I had interviewed for a call center job at another place that's as a complete 180 from that. Yes, it's a call center job, so it is what it is, but there was laughter on the floor. People talking to floor managers. Just a completely different vibe that was more inviting. Software developer here. I had a job contract that included a workshop clause. The usual code you write as part of this position is the property of the company. Except in this case, the way it was worded would let the company lay claim to anything I worked on, whether or not it was done on company time or with company resources. There was no way I was going to let them lay claim to my personal GitHub repository, especially when their answer to my question about benefits was "we'll see what we can do." I was interviewing at a local business that had recently been acquired by a well-known corp. I asked the interviewers a question that I found invaluable. What do you personally find are the most challenging parts of this job? And I watched the light leave their eyes. They both sighed dryly and said it's really busy. And that was all I needed to hear to know that working there would be a nightmare. I emailed afterward to remove myself from consideration, and I'm confident I did the right thing. Jumping on the not so subtle train here. About a month ago I interviewed for a position to run the office of a lawn/landscape company in my town. When I arrived, in-person interview, I waited at the receptionist's desk. A man wheeled out of the office in his desk chair and said to the receptionist, "Got a resume or anything for this one?" Meaning me. He literally looked at my resume for the first time sitting in front of me. He then started asking questions. Never introduced himself. No hi, how are you? Thanks for coming in, etc. He interviewed me while I was sitting at the receptionist's desk, with the receptionist sitting there working. If she took a call, he just paused until she was through. He repeatedly referred to his landscape crew as my Mexicans, and when I politely ended the interview, he said, "Well, if you want you can call on Friday to ask if we want you back for a second interview." Bro, no. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more. Love you.